Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. And by popular demand, Gill Gross is back. Gone back on. It's been a while, Gill. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for the demand. Thank you to all those people who out there who demanded.
Yeah,
Good to be back.
100 comments in my inbox. Where's Gill? Where's Gill? It's been so long. Well, you ask, I provide. Yeah, I mean, first of all, before we get into Wimbledon and previewing it, I haven't spoken to you since the French Open final, so we won't spend ages talking about it, but get your 2 cents on it, Gil. What did you think of it? I guess both French Open finals for the men's and women's.
Yeah, it's a big question. Well, for the women's, it was so interesting to see how everybody digested the result afterwards, particularly with Arena's comments. And at the end of the day, in slower clay court conditions, in wind especially, it takes a lot to get the ball through Coco, who is the fastest player in the world and is not going to give you errors. And she's tough as nails. Mentally, she's going to accept no matter like what the situation is or what the conditions are. You know, she's going to accept it and go to work, point in and point out. And Sabalenka, despite incredible consistency at the majors in the last 2.5 years, I can't remember the last time she's really been upset early in the first week. It's been a long time.
Still 2020.
What was it?
2020.
Yeah. Incredible, right? Still once you get her into the final or in the semis and she gets into a stressful situation, she can still lose control of her emotions and, unable to slow herself down there and, tighten things up and play with more margin. And, Coco, here's the thing about the post-match comments. It still seems like she thinks she's above losing to Coco Gauff, like she's too good to lose to Coco Gauff. And she's got to get that. I mean, that's just classic offensive player superiority complex that's rooted in total BS. And you see it everywhere. Like it's not just Sabalenka. It's literally like a thing around tennis. And there's definitely a psychological dynamic where you feel like if you're in control of the outcomes that you're superior. But we know that that's not always the case in tennis. And Sabalenka has now, she trails the head-to-head against Coco 5-4. She's lost in 2 major finals. She's not above losing to Coco, so she needs to try to put her ego aside and understand that this is a difficult matchup for her. And the things that Gauff is doing to beat her, it's not that Sabalenka just happens to wake up on the wrong side of the bed in the morning when she's about to play Coco Gauff. There are real things happening. So that's my thoughts on the women's final. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's been 2 apologies, I think, from her since. One on Instagram, which was okay, and then she also said she talked to Coco as well and apologized to her over the phone, or I'm assuming, unless it's a video call nowadays with FaceTime and everything. But yeah, I think she was clearly frustrated that she didn't play her best, but obviously a big factor of that was how Coco plays, her style. Yes, the conditions were tough, but it was tough for both players. She didn't adapt very well, and I think
but it's also okay to admit that the conditions help Coco. Like in
and
wind,
they do.
she's a better player, right? So the conditions were the same for both players, no doubt. But that doesn't mean that it can still favor one player or the other.
100%. Yeah, Coco definitely plays better in the conditions because of her style. I think she just is able to adapt to it better. I think what was more alarming was the fact that mentally Sabalenka has been very good for the last couple of years and clearly unraveled, and a lot of frustrations with probably herself. The fact that she lost the Australian Open final as well, she's probably had that in the back of her mind.
Yep.
That she probably feels that she should have won 2 slams this year, and then she played a really inspired Keys in a final set, which was, I mean, to be fair, she said Keys just played better than her in that match. I think that everyone can see that Keys just redlined for a lot of that match, and then with this all in Gauff, yeah, I mean it's a tough loss, but yeah, she just has to work through it, and I think she'll be fine for Wimbledon, which we'll touch upon in a second. And the surface will definitely favour her if she was to play golf. But it'd be interesting. I would like to see it at Wimbledon just to see the mental aspect as well of that. So that would be interesting.
For sure.
On the men's, obviously, one of, in my opinion, like I would say within the top 5 Grand Slam finals of all time is where I would put it, somewhere within that range. What did you think, I guess, of the quality of the level as well from both players, mainly, and also the drama of it all?
I think it was the greatest comeback of all time. It's difficult to rank matches in a precise manner. I mean, you can have an individual feeling or emotion about it based on where you were and how you felt about the players and all that. But I think, first of all, just an A+ tier 1 Mount Rushmore match, no matter what. But in terms of the comeback itself, it's really hard to imagine anything historically that compares to that against a world number 1 who has barely lost for a year and a half, 2 sets to love down, triple championship point down in a final. It's just still, there's still shock value when I think about the fact that it was triple championship point, and Carlos Alcaraz was Roland Garros champion. And then the way the 5th set twisted and turned a couple times really added to it, because it was shaping up to look like, okay, the drama's over. 5th set, Alcaraz. The drama was not over, which was part of it. But what I really came away from it more than anything was Carlos's fearlessness in pressurized situations in the biggest matches, the way he's able to deploy his creativity, his offensive skill set. There's no comfort zone with Alcaraz. He's comfortable. I don't want to say leaving his comfort zone. I think the better way to put it is he's so comfortable doing whatever it is he has to do, whatever it is pops up into his mind in that particular moment, where whether it be a bold net rush or a drop shot or a heavily angled forehand cross court or squash defense, like whatever it is, there's command over it. And the way he has met the moment time and time again, 11-1 in big finals, 11-2, no, 12 maybe. I think it's 12-2 in big finals if you count the Olympics. I had that number in my head and now it's a little fuzzy, but I think I got it right. It speaks to the fact that, we've seen it done a couple of different ways, like Djokovic, lockdown mode. I'm not going to miss. The ball's going to be deep. I'm not going to make any silly decisions. The movement and the defense, it's like a impenetrable wall, and you're going to have to kind of overcome that in a point in, point out in a big tiebreak. And Alcaraz has done it a completely different way, where it's I'm as brave as you can be. I'm going to go after it, and you don't know what's coming next. And whatever I'm doing, I have full confidence in whatever it is I'm doing in that moment. And the clutchness is just insane so far.
Yeah, 100%. I think in the past there's a bit of hesitancy on some of the shots because he has so many tools to utilize that. Shot selection was a big issue for him, but I think he has, I don't want to say mastered the art because he is still so young, but I'd say he's very close to doing that, especially in these big matches. And I think it shows in the matches against Sinner, especially, and or Djokovic, that his level, and I think mentally as well, he's just so much more dialed in. He does really step up to the occasion, to the plate. The pressure, I think, for a lot of players can be debilitating in these moments, but for him, it's actually the opposite. I think he really rises to the occasion, uses the crowd, and I think his reaction to saving the championship points, I think, says it all, because you can see on his face, and even post match, when they asked him about the points, he said, "Well, I just thought to myself, I have to fight because it's a Grand Slam final. What else is there to do? Why should I feel nervous? I just need to fight and do my best to come back." And that's what he did. And I think mentally he is Yeah, it's incredible at 22 years of age how he thinks. So we'll see what he's able to do, especially at Wimbledon and beyond. But a phenomenal final. What do you think for Sinner in terms of mentally? Do you think he just moves past it, Gil, and puts on a good show at Wimbledon? What's your thoughts on that?
I think so. Sinner, I've never seen him not move I've never not seen him move past something mentally in all my years so far of covering him. Granted, it's a pretty small sample size as an elite player. It's only a couple of years. Mostly things have gone right for him. You could argue that there hasn't been that much adversity. You could argue also that there has been a lot of adversity with the doping stuff, which he's had to kind of handle on, in a lot of different ways. There was kind of the behind the scenes stuff that was out of the public eye, that seemed to weigh the heaviest on him. But US Open, massive story. It broke the week of qualifying. It was a kind of a media circus. Didn't affect him, won the US Open. And then, coming back in Rome, home country, haven't played in 3 months. Again, there's a lot of distractions, a lot of attention. Didn't affect him. And then what about the success that can be just as difficult to deal with as the failure? Becomes number one. Never really has that moment where the expectation weighs on him. Wins his first major at the Australian Open. I always talk about this. He just kind of came back and won Rotterdam. Like, yep, we're going back at it. So all he's shown me so far is that he's just basically unflappable. And then also, I mean, you can say, okay, well, you're talking about wins here. You're talking about success. How do we know that he can, rebound from failure? I don't know. Like, he loses to Daniel Altmaier at Roland Garros in 5 sets, and it's a massive turning point for him because he changes his serve technique. He loses to straight sets against Stefanos Tsitsipas at the Australian Open in 2022, I want to say. Might have been 23. He fires Piatti. He brings on Vegnosi and Cahill, and that turns out to be like a positive development in his career. So I just never worry about Jannik Sinner mentally. That's your short answer.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's pretty steely in his mentality, and I think he'll move past it pretty well. I think he seems to be in relatively good spirits considering what a heartbreaking loss it was as well. Looking towards Wimbledon and Gil, Carlos has just come off a Queen's victory as well. Looked pretty good throughout the tournament. I wouldn't say he was at his best, but that tends to be the case with the elite players. They don't tend to peak until, or try to peak anyway, until the slams. We don't normally see their top level until then. For Sinner, he lost to Bublik in Halle. Bublik's playing some really good tennis, got revenge, and as he said, guys, I finally got him, which is a funny comment from him, but clearly shows, I guess, the difference between clay and grass, and that was really interesting to see. And I think good to see in a way for the game that yes, the surfaces there are some similarities, but they're not so homogenized now that actually Bublik on clay versus Bublik on grass is a completely different animal. And I think given that Sinner as well would have been a bit burnt up from the French Open final, was going into that, maybe not 100%, but Bublik really took advantage of it. What are your thoughts, I guess, not just around Carlos and Yannick, but from what you've seen so far in the last few weeks? Who are the players that have really stuck out to you as potential contenders?
Yeah, so I really don't come away with much, at least from the Sinner Alcaraz Queens Halle results. Honestly, you know, I think both of them coming into the week, from an outsider standpoint, you give them total grace. It doesn't matter if they lose; like you get grace because it's been a week after Wimbledon. Sinner actually a little bit less so, although emotionally it was tougher. It's tougher to lose than to win. He's had so much time off in 2025. I think it's more of like, he's chomping at the bit to continue to play tournaments at this point. For Alcaraz, long, tough clay court season, Ibiza for a couple of days. Whatever happens in Queens. He happened to win it. The path was way easier than I can remember. I haven't looked back at Queen's runs as of late. I imagine this was one of the easier paths to a Queen's title that we've seen in a long, long time. He only played one top 50 player. It was Lehechka, world number 30 in the final. So I think it's fair to say Alcaraz probably wasn't 100% mentally, wasn't 100% physically, and he won Queens because he beat everybody in front of him because he's just that much better. Sinner ends up playing Alexander Bublik, who is just peaking at the moment in Halle, which is a one of the quicker grass courts. It's basically indoors with the architecture. I mean, Bublik's a Terminator in Halle, and he's shown it before, and he showed it for the rest of the tournament. So, not surprising that Jannik couldn't win that match. And to me, circumstantially, both players, I come away thinking exactly the same as I did coming in.
And what did you think coming in is the question.
Well, that they're co-favorites going into Wimbledon. We can leave it there for now, right?
Co-favorites. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, well, I lean one way or the other. I just don't know if we want to save that for later in the podcast, because right now we're talking about the run up to grass season, right? the run up to Wimbledon. Yeah. Let's see. I mean, what are the main? I mean, look, Medvedev makes another final. It had been a long, long time. Okay. Fritz is looking better than he did throughout the first few months of the season. Obviously, a player who's now won 4 grass court titles, a couple of Wimbledon quarterfinals. Musetti has taken off. Djokovic has taken off. We haven't seen them on the grass. I would say the most interesting thing, and perhaps the most notable thing, might be Jack Draper in Queens, just looking a little bit on edge emotionally, looking as if he's not firing on all cylinders right now. If there's one thing that I saw in the last couple of weeks that maybe has me rethinking like a Wimbledon prediction, it might be that. I mean, what did you think of Jack in Queens?
Yeah, I think he said he wasn't feeling too well. I don't know how much to look into that, but what I will say is that I think Lehechka played quite well, but that was a result that was a bit surprising. I was expecting him to make the final, play Alcaraz, and see, I guess, how he'd get on there, given that he beat Alcaraz last in the first round, albeit Alcaraz had those couple of days in Ibiza then as well. Yeah, I think that result was a little bit surprising. But at the same time, I know he hasn't had as long a clay court season as an Alcaraz or Sinner, even. But I do think his conditioning is not as good as those guys, and I feel like the quicker turnaround could potentially have had some sort of effect, as he was saying he wasn't 100%. But I think if he's fit and healthy at Wimbledon and he picks up some steam in the early rounds, the draw could be a big factor, of course. Because I don't know who you draw. I mean, luckily for the seeds, Bublik is seeded. It was looking likely like he might not be if he didn't win Halle, he wouldn't have been. So that would have been a massive issue. But I think really I would be shocked if he is not carrying an injury, if he's not ill. I'd be shocked if he doesn't at least make the second week of Wimbledon. I think that's kind of the expectation here in the UK.
Yeah.
That he should be making some sort of deep run because he's got the game. He likes playing here, he said it himself. And I think he's got the weapons to do well here. And actually the same can be said for another fellow lefty who maybe you could speak on in Ben Shelton. I think I was really impressed with how he played at the French versus Alcaraz. Considering that clay, I would say, is his weakest surface. I think on grass, he should be an absolute monster with his skill set. It's just maybe the movement piece, which is potentially missing for him because his movement generally is very good on hard, and I think he's improving on clay. But I think on grass, the movement for a lot of players, inexperienced players, is the big sticking point because it's how can they move as effectively as possible. And that's why we've seen someone like a Djokovic, for example, dominate the the younger guys so much, and we haven't really seen, for example, the now gen in like Zverev and Tsitsipas and Medvedev really have too much success at Wimbledon, and I think that's potentially part of it as well.
Yeah, I love Ben Shelton at majors. I always want to get behind him at majors. I think he's honestly, like, mentally, he's probably the closest thing to Alcaraz in
Yeah,
terms of how he approaches a big point at at a major, especially against a top player. I was really impressed with the loss at Roland Garros against Alcaraz as well. I thought that was kind of a transformative loss. I'm not as lockstep with you on the surface fit. I
okay,
think there are a lot of things grass wise that don't bode as well for Ben. Like, he's one of the big ones for me. I think the more backhands he's hitting, the worse. And
yeah,
if against good players, if he's hitting a lot of backhands in a rally, it's trouble. And on the clay and on hard courts as well, there's just more time for him to get around and to use the
yeah,
forehand. So that's one aspect of it. And the other is the spin. The way he uses spin on his second serve, nastiest kick serve in tennis. The forehand is a heavy RPM forehand. He definitely can flatten it out. He
yeah.
really does a good job of modulating his spins. But I do think that's another area where the grass actually maybe hurts him a little bit. I don't think he's going to be bad on grass, and he's obviously an elite server. But I do think that it's not like I don't think he gets a huge boost from the surface.
Yeah,
Who did
that's
you
interesting.
mention?
Sorry, go on.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
No, I was going to say that I think I agree with you on the backhand point, especially. I think the quickness of the surface is interesting because Wimbledon doesn't really play that fast anymore,
No.
especially compared to say somewhere like Hala. I think actually when I was looking at the court speed metrics, I think it was slower than the Australian Open, if I'm right. When I was looking at the pace court index,
Or was
which
it
was
the
pretty
tennis
surprising.
abstract?
Yeah, yeah, and I was pretty surprised by that. But it's since they've changed the blend of the grass. Like, I think it's like a blend of rye or something. I've forgotten exactly what
Yep.
the blend is, but essentially they've changed it, and there's a whole big piece on, oh, why have you changed it? And it's because apparently it holds up better and it doesn't get worn as much, but it's also meant that it's slowed down the surface a little bit. And actually, towards the back end of the tournament, a lot of people say that it becomes more like a hard court or more hard court like. So that obviously suits, someone like an Alcaraz, for example, who likes to play a lot of spin when he can as well. And I guess it would suit someone like an Nadal if he was in his prime and playing right now as well. But yeah, I think for Shelton, it's an interesting one because, as you say, he likes to hit a really big kick serve. I mean, he can hit a very potent slice serves. I guess it's not really something that he's used to hitting on, especially on a second serve. We don't see it much on the men's tour. It's more of a women's tour type serve to hit, even on grass. Medvedev is the first person that pops into my mind when I think of a second serve slice. But yeah, I agree that I think the backhand slice isn't quite potent enough to really get him out of trouble on grass, and the backhand is solid, but probably would be found out against some of the elite players on grass. That would be interesting to see as well, how he does get on. What are your thoughts on Bublik then? Because he played really well in Harlow. He also played quite well in the French as well. I think it was a pretty surprising run from him. And now he's coming to Wimbledon, or coming into Wimbledon. And as the surface is slightly slower, but he's seeded, which is a real big plus for him as well. Like, how dangerous do you think he can be at Wimbledon?
I'm a buyer. Yeah. In 2023, when Bublik won Hala, there was a huge swell of Bublik optimism coming into Wimbledon. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah,
And I was
yeah,
just like, I did not get it at all. I mean, I watched that Hala run and nobody could return his serve. And that was it. That was the title run. It was like, it was a total ace fest and that was it. And I'm like, he's not just going to ace everybody en route to the Wimbledon semis. Like, that's not going to happen. And it didn't. I am now seeing actual change in his game. And I actually think it started when he switched rackets, when he went to
Yeah,
the Babolat Pure Arrow. I
pure
just
90.
think
Yeah,
somehow his forehand totally changed. And now he's basically playing a power baseline game off of both wings, combining that with his serving and his finesse, setting up his drop shots better, continuing to be like an incredibly imposing net rusher. And now I think, like, offensively or as a baseliner, he's a totally different player, because he used to play a lot of patty cake from the back of the court.
yeah. A lot of slices on the forehand. Very strange, like really strange.
Yeah, a lot of slices on the forehand because he had no confidence.
Yeah, yeah,
Sometimes he would just roll the forehand, like just molasses
yeah,
speeds, and that was no good. And then when he looked to attack, it would get flat and it would be low percentage.
yeah,
Now he has this like high margin aggression on his forehand that he's unlocked. And I just think it changes everything. So I'm a total believer in Bublik now. I think he's coming in, and I think he's going to be really dangerous.
yeah. I agree. I'm buying Bublik stock for sure, or shares. I think he's looking good. He's confident. I think it'll be interesting to see what his draw looks like. I think is the biggest thing, and who he could potentially play. And yeah, we'll see. We'll see how he gets on. But I'm excited. He's such a, in my opinion anyway, a very entertaining player to watch, especially when he's playing well.
When he's
And
trying.
when he's trying, yeah. And he's in that Kyrgios mold, right? I mean, there's a lot of similarities in terms of game style. And I think obviously Kyrgios is not going to be at Wimbledon this year. He's also not commentating, but we won't talk about that because. And also, Chris Eubanks isn't commentating either, but
No, no.
but
But that's the media's fault. That's the media's fault for creating this beef, not the guy who brought up Chris Eubanks out of the blue.
oh, it's hilarious. But yeah, he actually had a live event here actually yesterday, I think it was. But
Well, also
yeah,
he's going on Talk Sport. He's gonna contribute
talk
to
sport.
Talk
Okay,
Sport. Did you see
okay.
that today?
No, I didn't. I didn't. Okay, interesting. Talk sport. That's
Is that
interesting.
big? Is that big over there?
It's pretty big. Yeah, I mean, it's not as big as BBC. It's a radio show, so yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, so there'll be some clips on like maybe YouTube and video, but it's mainly radio. So he'll just be doing a lot of radio work. Um, he won't be doing, I guess, any in-person
Matches.
or broadcasting from BBC or Sky or Tennis Channel or whoever else. By the sounds of it, which is, I mean, I think he gives pretty good insight, but we don't need to talk about his broadcasting capabilities. You've been doing a lot of broadcasting, haven't you, Gil? So, what have you been covering actually in terms of tournaments on the grass? Have you noticed anything whilst you've been commentating?
I did the week after. I did the week of Stuttgart, and the women were in Queens, and what was the other one? Oh, her Hertogenbosch,
Yeah.
and then maybe a little Eastbourne, which we didn't really touch at all when the women were there. We didn't cover much of that. But anyway, I did a lot of Taylor Fritz that week, like a ton,
Okay.
and he barely faced break points. I mean, it was just deadly serving on those quick courts. And you know, that was again something that I noted. I know I kind of brought him up earlier because
Yeah.
it definitely stuck in my head a little bit. I think he's been a little bit less convincing since. Still alive in Eastbourne this week, which is a tournament he's won 3 times, but he's kind of had to scrap through his matches, especially compared to Stuttgart. He beat Zverev again, right? That's 5 times in a row.
Zverev sick of seeing him, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I did some Zverev there. I certainly wasn't super convinced by anything I saw from him. I mean, it's kind of the same problems that you see from him on grass all the time. The serve does not get the boost that you think it might. The contact points being lower, especially on his backhand, hurt, and the offensive instinct on the forehand not really being there is
Yeah.
it hurts him on the surface.
He hits with a lot of spin on his serve. I don't think people realize, but a lot of spin. So on clay, it's like really potent. On hard courts, you get that bounce as well. But on grass, it's just not there. He doesn't really have. I don't think he's got an elite slice serve. I mean, that could be
Nope.
a weird take, but I don't think he does.
Well, he played
From
Medvedev, right? He played
yeah,
Medvedev in Halle,
yeah,
and Daniil was not, Daniil was returning from the back fence on a grass court.
yeah. He was,
And
yeah,
yeah, we've
yeah,
seen him move up at times, but he's actually staying back from what I've seen this year.
yeah.
And um in the final, Bublik in the final, who actually doesn't really love to hit his slice serve, prefers to just bomb it. Saw Medvedev on the back fence, and it was slice serves for days.
Yeah.
He killed him with it. Zverev did not. So I totally agree. Like Zverev doesn't really slide it out wide all that well. And when you're on a grass court and the guy's on the back fence, like it's easy pickings if you can hit the serve.
100%. Just needs to take a little bit off, find the angle. Come on, Sasha. We could have even done it, me and Gill. But no, no. In all seriousness, though, I think it's just the issue that he has is he's unfortunately for grass he does not have the extra dimension that is needed. He's just a little bit one-dimensional. I think that's where I think he has historically always struggled at Wimbledon. I don't think he's ever made a semi-final. I could be wrong. I don't
He's
think he
never made a
has.
quarterfinal.
Yeah, he lost a round of 16 last to Fritz, where he was 2 sets to 1 up, I want to say. I was in the press conference.
He was.
For that, so
He was
this,
injured.
yeah.
He was injured in that match, but yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, he wasn't injured when he was
It
2 sets
got
to 1
better
up.
though.
So yeah.
I know. Well, that's what. So that match made
That's the thing,
no
right? So,
sense. That match made no sense because in the beginning he wasn't moving well, and then he was
yeah,
winning, and then he started moving well, and he couldn't win anymore. He started losing.
yeah.
It made no sense.
Taylor just played in the wind better. It was quite windy. I remember that date. And they had the weird moment at the net as well, where Sarah was like, "Tell your box to shut up," basically. Stop cheering. That's so strange. But
Those two don't
yeah,
get along that well.
who Taylor and Sasha?
It doesn't seem that way to me.
It's interesting because in the post match at Harlow, Zverev really tried to joke around with Taylor, and I don't know if Taylor just kind of laughed it off or it was a bit of an awkward moment. But
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, they know how to act in public, right? It's not that bad that they're not gonna publicize that. But I just think there have been some subtle things between the two that suggest that when push comes to shove, they're not the best of buddies. But that's I don't know that as a fact. I get that sense.
yeah, we need more Tsitsipas Medvedev beef. That's what we need. But they're too friendly now. It's after they had lunch together at the Laver Cup. Since then, it's been all downhill. It's too friendly, too buddy. No, I think it's going to be interesting because this is where when it comes to Wimbledon grass, these guys. I mean, Tsitsipas, for example, same issues, right? That Shelton has. Backhand gets exposed big time with a one-hander, low contact point. It just kills him. He has the ability on serve, but I think he just gets rushed on the forehand. It becomes awkward. I actually think he should be better on grass because he's got a good net game, but I just feel like there's a bit of a movement issue. And on clay, he just has a lot more time to hit a lot more forehands, which is obviously a big plus for him. He's also not been in great form this year. I think it's fair to say. Medvedev, I think, actually is the most well equipped because he hits a lot of slice serves. He likes hitting flat. The only thing for him is he's very tall, so again, the low contact point can kill him. But he made the semi-finals last year. Obviously, beat an ill Yannick as well. So interesting to see if he can make a similar run this year. I think it'll be tough for him, but I mean, I don't see why he wouldn't himself be aiming for that at least. And that really leaves Carlos, Yannick, and then what are your thoughts on Novak? How do you think he's going to do?
I think it's going to be really. I think this is Djokovic's probably his last chance to win a major.
Okay.
And it's a little bit arbitrary to say, okay, which tournament do you really draw that line for? But historically and age-wise, and I think when you look at the trajectory of how things have gone, he's still showing flashes right now of awesome tennis, and the ball striking, especially, like even throughout Roland Garros, ball striking was awesome. I think he was at a little bit of an athleticism deficit against Sinner in that
Yeah,
semifinal match, which ended up costing him in 3 tight sets. But if you have the right conditions where he can kind of just, I don't know, where his skills can go a bit of a longer way. The spot serving, especially, which is really become some of the best in the world. And he's playing aggressive on his forehand. His backhand is a way more potent weapon on grass than it is on the other surfaces.
yeah,
And the movement, as you mentioned, he's such a great natural mover on grass because of the balance and how hard he's willing to move into the corners. I felt for a long time, look, 6 straight Wimbledon finals, numbers don't lie. I think it's his best chance in terms of conditions, and it does feel like the time is clearly starting to wind down, but we've still seen those flashes of elite tennis, and that's why I just get that feeling that it might happen here if the draw shakes out well, especially if he doesn't need to beat Sinner. And let's say he's playing Carlos in the final. I think something like that would be his best chance. Obviously, if he if he got to somehow avoid both of them, that would be a whole different story regardless. But to me, he's a clear third favorite. At the French, I wasn't sure. And I thought it wasn't out of the realm of possibility that Novak could be upset like he was at the US Open against Popperin. And then
okay.
once he started actually playing the matches in Paris, I thought, okay, well, that's not going to happen. He looks great. But coming into this Wimbledon, I feel like he's a solid third favorite.
Yeah, I agree. It's hard to think who else. Maybe Musetti,
Jack Draper.
Draper. Yeah, I think if Jack had made the final and put on a good show versus Alcaraz, even lost, I would have put him. I maybe would have thought about, okay, maybe third. Musetti, I don't even has he even played any tennis
No,
since
he hasn't,
Roland
which is
Garros.
good. Which is good. Here's the one thing that we didn't talk about with Zverev. He's playing way too much. I can't see this going well second half of 2025. I
He's
just
trying
can't.
to he's trying to capture the number one title without winning a slam. That's why.
I guess I don't know what it is. I mean, he's playing
I don't
every
know what it is.
week. It's
Yeah, I think
insane.
he's looking for something. I think clearly form wise, and he's just battering himself to try and find it after that Australian Open loss because he hasn't looked as good
There's a lot of
since.
German events. That's the only thing
That's true as
I'll say.
well.
I
That's
mean,
true. Yeah, Stuttgart. Yeah, and then also Haller as well. So that's a good point.
Hamburg.
Hamburg as well. Yeah, yeah, it's a good point. That could be it. That could be it as well. But yeah, I agree on the Novak point. I think interestingly, I had actually picked him. I had said before the year started that if he were to win a slam, I'd gone the opposite of you, and I thought he would have to win it at Roland Garros because given the Olympic final with Carlos, and then obviously being with us in the semi-finals of Roland Garros a couple of years ago as well, I just thought he'd probably potentially be a favourite against Sinner. Obviously, that wasn't the case. Sinner beat him in the end, but I thought, okay, he could potentially beat Sinner on clay. I didn't really feel fancy him against Sinner on grass or hard court. And then for Carlos, he'd beaten him in 2 Wimbledon finals, and I just thought, okay, maybe if we can see that Novak who played in the Olympics on clay play at Roland Garros, then okay, he might have a pretty good chance. But obviously, that didn't pan out. I do agree that I think Wimbledon, he's definitely a third favourite. I find it very tough, which is very weird because Sinner hasn't beaten on grass yet. But I just find it very hard to move past him losing to a Sinner Alcaraz. I've struggled to see how he does it, even on grass. I get the point's going to be shorter. I get he can be aggressive with the forehand, the spot serving. He moves really well at the corners. The only other person that slides like him on grass is Sinner because of their skiing backgrounds. Well, Sinner's skiing
Yeah.
background. Alcaraz doesn't, but he moves exceptionally well. But it's a different type of movement, more like Rafa. But I just struggle given the firepower that both Carlos and Sinner have, I struggle to see how he beats them, to be honest. I was about to say, I hope I'm wrong. I don't really have a horse in this race, but I hope I'm wrong in the sense that it would be interesting to see him at least push them close at Wimbledon and really put on a competitive performance, because it would be a shame in what could be his last ever Wimbledon to see him either get upset or lose to them like really convincingly. Like he just said at Roland Garros, where I thought he actually implemented the right game plan. Like he tried to mix it up, high balls. Like he essentially tried to play how Carlos would play against Sinner in a lot of ways with a variety. And I thought it was the right game plan, but Sinner was just, as you said, athletically just a level above. The age difference, I think, showed a little bit in that match, which you can't really say for most people. But I think for Sinner, because he's just such an athletic phenom that, yeah, we saw it. But the ball quality's there. Like I thought he played so well. I thought he was so unlucky not to win a set, at least, because I thought the level was so high. But Sinner was just too good in that one. But what do you think if he were to play one of them at Wimbledon? What kind of chance would you give him?
Well, Sinner, less good. I just think if you watch the last few times they've played, I mean, there's a clear issue there where I don't think Novak knows where to find an advantage. And I just, he's had no success on Sinner serve, just none. He hasn't broken them really at all. The fact that they played on a clay court at night and Novak only broke Jannik once after going 2 matches without breaking Sinner serve, not good. So Sinner, I just think he's almost hit a block there. Alcaraz obviously has beaten him in a couple of big matches now within the last year, in the last 52 weeks, right? Once at the Olympics, once at the Australian Open. There's stuff where like Novak can use his slice serve into Alcaraz's forehand, and Carlos has struggled on that return. Novak has attacked Alcaraz's second serve really well, even though at times it's felt like Carlos's kick on the ad side when used as a first serve has been kind of nightmarish for Novak. It's seemingly on the second serve, Djokovic has at least kind of figured out how to attack that, and just in general making Alcaraz pay whenever he misses spots on serve. Just playing suffocating, taking time away, being, the more consistent player backhand, which I think is increasingly hard to do against Alcaraz. So I think the chances are a little bit better. At the same time, I think Carlos has made some big improvements here, and he's beaten them twice in 2 Wimbledon finals in a row. So it's not as if you can say like the matchup favors Novak when we've seen what we've seen at Wimbledon the last couple of years. And look, like last year, Djokovic's movement was less than 100% with, coming off the knee injury, didn't stop him from basically destroying everybody en route to that final, just leaning on the skills. And then, the year before, though, there's not much you can point to other than a fantastic 5-set final where Alcaraz played just a miraculously good 5th set. It feels very much on Alcaraz's racket. I think the best argument against Carlos is that it's like just really insanely difficult to win back-to-back channel doubles.
Yeah, 100%.
Is that a real argument? I don't know if that's a real argument.
I don't know. It's a weird one because I was even thinking, but after he won the French, I was thinking, can he really win 3 Wimbledons in a row? Like, that's really tough. And then also to go back to back with a channel title, like, has anyone even done that? I don't even know if that's been done.
Think Borg.
Maybe Borg, yeah. But I mean, I remember when Rafa just won in 2008, won them together, the French Wimbledon. I just thought, whoa, this is ridiculous. And then obviously Novak's done it as well. And
Borg did 3 in a row.
Borg did 3 in a row. Bloody
yeah.
Wow, incredible. It's phenomenal. I mean, yeah, then why not? It's not an argument then. If Borg did it, why not? No, I mean, look, it's definitely going to be tough, I think. But the one thing I'll say is that I think the advantage that Carlos has is that everyone else on the tour is just so far behind on grass specifically that I actually don't think. I feel like if the US Open came straight after the French Open, I would actually be more inclined to say I don't think he's going to win it. Because I just feel like there's a bigger gap between himself and, let's say, Sinner, Djokovic, and the rest of the field than there is with those three and the rest of the field on a hard court or even on a clay court. That's just the feeling I get. A lot of it is down to the movement. A lot of it's down to the skill set. There's just not a lot of people that can attack the net as well as he can move as well as he can on grass, can serve as well as he can. I mean, he hit in the Queen's final, he hit 18 aces, and afterwards talking about how he felt like Apelka and John Isner, and now he knows how they feel, which is quite funny. And I heard them then talk about it on their podcast. That was hilarious. But yeah, I mean, and then obviously with the forehand, we know the variety on that. The backhand slice as well is really effective. The drop shot is killer. The lob. I mean, it's just there's just so many different ways that he can win matches, and then on grass it just comes to the fore because the variety is just so effective. There's just not many players on tour that can do everything he does effectively. There's just I can count them on one finger. I think is probably probably what I'm talking about because we're not talking about prime Djokovic at the moment. We're not talking about an older Djokovic, and then with Sinner, yes, he had a lot of those characteristics, but he doesn't have the same variety or the same number of tools in his kit bag. So I find it really, really difficult to see how the rest of the tour are anywhere near the level. And I think, as you said, maybe it just comes down to how he plays. Like, is it on his racket?
Right.
If he were to play a Sinner in the final, which obviously is a possibility, that would be interesting because obviously Sinner beat Alcaraz in 2022 in the round of 16, if I'm not mistaken, and really killed Alcaraz in the backhand to backhand. Alcaraz was slicing a lot in that match, but it was more out of desperation because he just wasn't able to kind of stick with Sinner in the drive backhand to backhand exchange, and he was just going to the slice whilst on the stretch a lot of the time in that, and then it was getting killed with pace. But I don't think that would be as much of an issue now as we've seen. But that would be an intriguing matchup that hopefully we might see again after the French Open. But maybe someone like maybe Novak has something to say. Maybe a Bublik. I don't know. I mean, it'd be crazy to see Bublik beat one of them at Wimbledon. I think that would be crazy. I would actually like to see him play Novak and see like how does Novak, because historically speaking, Novak has just eaten big servers for breakfast. I mean, it's just easy pickings for him. But this Novak, I wonder how he fares with someone like that.
Yeah, I mean, this Novak, I think in recent years there have been a couple matches where I've been thinking like, where's the impenetrable return? I mean, Menchik in the Miami final is an example. Jakob kind of served Novak off the court. So he's definitely lost a little bit of the defensive returning that used to just be like just ridiculous. It's still a very technically sound and awesome return of serve, but it's not quite what it used to be. I don't think. In terms of the Sinner Alcaraz head-to-head potential, I think a lot would come down to if Jannik can up his serving level, because if he doesn't outserve Carlos, I still think it's trouble. And what Andre Agassi has been saying a lot has been interesting, where he's kind of saying that Carlos on anything slippery has an advantage because of his movement, his athleticism. I think it's a great point. Most players just slow down on the grass and slow down to a certain extent on the clay. And Carlos is so athletically special that he's just unaffected in terms of balance and coordination, whether it be the clay court movement or the grass court movement. He's still flying around the court. And Sinner, you feel like he does lose a half a step when he's not on hard court.
Yeah, it's a good point. And it's crazy because we're talking about such small margins here, but these small
Tiny.
margins are what make what make or break these matchups, right? So, but yeah, I agreed. I feel like Carlos is just generally the more natural mover, I think it's fair to say, and then that comes to the fore when he play in the conditions that he does at Wimbledon and then Roland Garros as well. So yeah, 100%. So that'll be interesting to see. I guess we'll see in the first few rounds, like how comfortable does Sinner look and moving wise, and does it look like he's, as you said, has he lost like half a step compared to how we used to seeing him on a hard court? Sorry, even I remember actually in one of your mailbags, someone said, "Oh, does Sinner look slower on the clay?" And you said, "Well, I mean, clay is a slow surface, so he's a little bit slower." But yeah, like he probably looks a little bit slower as well because it's maybe not as natural for him to move on it as it would be on a hard court. So yeah, interesting to see in terms of, I guess, outside of those three, and we've talked a little about Draper, Shelton. I mean, we haven't really talked about Musetti, but who are the guys that you think can do something at Wimbledon who people should potentially look out for? Do you think?
Berrettini's going to play. You know, he's been injured since Madrid, but I think a lot of people are going to just be like, oh, like where did Matteo come from? Like maybe he can do something. Because I mean, we've seen him come back from injury in the past and immediately make some noise. At the same time, I mean, it would be surprising if he goes on a massive run because like Matteo, he's probably a little bit overrated as like a danger to top players. He's kind of never
Yeah,
been that guy, even on grass, like where he's won Queens a couple times and won Stuttgart a couple times. He's not usually like he's not beating Djokovic to win these titles.
yeah,
But I think Berrettini is worthy of a mention, and I think Menchik, huge serve, rock solid backhand, flat ground strokes, good net rushing, just a lot to like. The thing that you don't like is the best of 5 track record so far. I mean,
yeah.
you know, the 5 setters have been rough for him. He's lost from 2 sets to love up 3 times and he's 19, which is like, I mean, my goodness, it's brutality. Hopefully like that doesn't affect him mentally too much, but yeah, I think that Menchik. Oh, and then his grass court results also in the lead up haven't been all that convincing. But in general, I think he's going to, at some point in his career, do really, really big things at Wimbledon.
Yeah, I agree. I think his skill set is too good not to be, well, too good for him not to be making a pretty deep one at some point, and potentially even being a contender. I think it was Andy Roddick was saying that he thinks that his game would be perfect for Wimbledon, and this was before I think when he'd won, when he was winning a lot of matches during the Miami Indian Wells swing. Um, I wanted to ask you actually about, we're talking about Menchik, and there's some other guys in that realm, in that age group. Holger Rune, what do we think, Gil? He's had a very interesting season. Can he do
Yes.
anything at Wimbledon?
Probably not. Maybe the, you know, I don't know. I don't have any really strong feelings on how how suited he is for grass, but I do have more confident opinions on, you know, the fact that in best of 5 he continues to just run out of gas at some point. His 4th round performances, his quarterfinal performances throughout his career, there have just been so many kind of uncompetitive. He hit a wall either mentally or usually physically, sometimes both. He's And just in general, he has way too many bad days in the office where he's going to have like a 5-setter against Kontan Alice, which he's now done twice, you know, once at Wimbledon last year, once at Roland Garros this year. And then he's going to come back for the next match and he's going to look jaded and he's going to lose. So that's been the pattern. I I guess like I've been a little bit discouraged by the lack of progress in terms of just choices and identity and decision making, which I know he knows it's an issue. I know his team has worked on it. He just doesn't seem to have a really good feel for all of this for whatever reason, and he can't get past it. It's been a problem for years and years and years. So there are going to be weeks like Barcelona where there's clarity in what he's doing, and he's going to be really tough to beat when he gets into that mode. But I think he's shown that that's not really going to be the norm.
Yeah, agreed. I think when he won Barcelona and beat Alcaraz, you're thinking, okay, right, this is what we want. This is what we're looking for. Can you now go on, kick on from here, and show us some more big results? And the answer was no, which is unfortunate. But yeah, I mean, I think the coaching situation is just being constant and like the flip flopping and changing, and it's just a shame because he needs some stability. I think just get him going, and like it's not helping with his identity of play. I feel like he doesn't really know how he wants to play. Does he want to be a counter puncher? Does he want to be someone who rushes the net a lot? Does he want to be aggressive from the baseline and be a power baseline? I have no idea because he has a lot of different ways of playing, and that's okay in terms of having the skill set, but you need to have, as you said, quite a clear identity, and I'm not really sure what it is. We know he's athletic, but that's kind of where it stops, to be honest, in terms of how exactly does he want to play, which is a shame because he's 22 years old, and hopefully finds something quite soon.
Yeah. The
Yeah, I'm
RBA
not
loss,
sure.
by the way, the Bautista Agut loss was
Yeah,
concerning. I mean, he played 3 sets. He didn't generate a break chance. He faced 14.
yeah.
I love RBA on grass. I mean, he's a really good grass courter,
Dark
but
horse Wimbledon, Gill.
not really. But like a third, fourth round dark horse. Yeah, I mean, Holger shouldn't be getting that thoroughly outplayed by Bautista Agut.
Yeah, agreed. It would have been a real steal if he'd taken that first tiebreaker and 1 and 2 tiebreakers. That would have been
Yes.
without generating a single break point. But sometimes that can happen on grass. Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting for him what he does going forward. I imagine post grass he'll be looking at the hard courts and thinking I do something there. But yeah, it's a shame. I don't really know what's going on. This is why we keep on going back to Sinner and Alcaraz because these guys are just not able to string results together and have that level of consistency. There's just a massive, massive gap between these guys and the rest of the field, which is a shame. Which is a shame. Well, Musetti then he hasn't played. He's rested. I think he's playing the exhibitions at the Giorgio Tennis Classic in Hurlingham, I think. So, well, he has played some already. So, but they're just exhibitions, champs, tiebreakers as well for a third set. What do you think his chances are going to be? Semi-finals last year. Do you think he can make a similar run this year?
Yeah, I do. If I were to bet on somebody to, outside of Sinner, Alcaraz, and Djokovic to make the semis, well, I mean, Draper's the 4 seed, so it's not really a fair question, but I'm a little bit more like, I guess what I was trying to say is that I'm as confident in Musetti to not be upset based on his results as anybody, meaning the last 2 years, Musetti on the natural surfaces doesn't take a bad loss. Just doesn't really happen. Hasn't punched up all that well. He he doesn't have any big titles yet. He hasn't beaten elite competition much. So that's the knock on him. You don't really feel like he's the most dangerous guy for a Sinner or an Alcaraz in a semifinal. There are probably some other players who could make them a little bit more uncomfortable than Lorenzo Musetti. But he's got a great grass court game with the backhand slice, which is elite. The forehand drop shot he uses incredibly well on the grass, and he moves impeccably well. He's a terrific mover on the grass. Just has a real knack for it. Again, that kind of plus athleticism that just allows him to be kind of natural right away. So, kind of uses the slowness. It's almost like Wimbledon isn't too fast where his defense can still be a factor, but the bounce is still low enough where his slicing still works really well. And he gets that really nice balance. He's really tough to attack against, and his block returning is awesome.
Yeah, agreed. One of the best backhand slices I'd say on tour. I think it's a really good one. Up there with the Berrettinis and Dan Evans potentially as well. But yeah, I think he's got the tools to do well at Wimbledon. Interesting to see whether he's able to back up last year's result, which was very, very impressive.
Yeah.
His serve's also improved as well. He's made some big gains on serve.
For sure.
Definitely got bigger and it's more potent, which is great. And I think he's playing with more purpose on the forehand wing as well, which is always important. On the natural surfaces, good touch. As you said, great forehand drop shot as well. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he does as well. Gil, is anyone that we've missed that you want to discuss? That you want to shout out?
Gab Diallo.
Yeah, Hurton Gambosh
Yeah,
winner.
this should be his best surface because it's the serve and the net rushing for Diallo. He's not a huge hitter from the back, but he's going to serve big and he's going to get forward. He's got a flat backhand. And Hubert Hurkacz just seems very like lingery also. So if you want like who's the unseeded player who, now that Bublik is seeded, who's the unseeded player where somebody might be like, you cannot be serious. I feel like it's Hurkacz.
Yeah, 100%. I hope he finds some form because it's a shame to see him drop so low down the rankings. But yeah, whoever gets in first round is going to feel very hard done by, I imagine.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, he should do some damage on the grass if he's able to find some form. Another one is Mpeshi Pericard as well. He should. I know he made the round of 16 last year, but the big issue for him is the movement. The one-hander as well the one-hander is a real problem for him on the grass, I think. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see how he gets on. Anyone else?
Humbert is a guy who
turns up at the grass.
Yeah, absolutely. He hurt his right wrist, and he's struggled for last few months, I think, because of it. But obviously, if you're going to build like a grass court specialist, it looks a lot like Humbert. Not that he has been results-wise recently, but that's pretty much what it looks like. It's just short backswings, taking the ball early, redirecting everything, slice serve, lefty. It's kind of money. So it will not surprise me at all at any point in Humbert's career if he has a big run at Wimbledon.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Okay. Gil, if there's no one else to talk about, we can wrap it up.
We've talked about everybody.
We have everyone. So if you've been missed out and you're watching this as an
all the players,
then you can put in the comment section below that we missed you out, and then I'll bring Gil back on and we'll discuss you for a special edition, unique chat just about you.
Absolutely. Sounds good to me. Logic checks out.
Oh man, exactly. Yeah. Actually, before we go, I wanted to mention. So, I've been at Wimbledon qualifying as media, so may as well be worth mentioning some people who potentially could be difficult for people to play. So one is Basilashvili, who's in qualifying. And I mean, he just rips the ball as we know, but he was moving really well on the surface. I think probably better than I expected him to, which is a big plus. Also serving really well. So I think he'll be a bit of a nightmare for whoever gets him in the first round. Nicholas Jarry, who obviously has been in really bad form this year, but he got through qualifying really, really simply, like straight sets, dominating his opponents. If he's serving well, it's going to be really difficult to come up against. I think he hit like 13 aces, 71% of first serves, in an 81% of first serve points, won in his final qualifying match against Lucas Klein, who's a solid player.
Yep.
Manarino, 4-set win in his final qualifying, and obviously, I think probably a bit unlucky not to get a wild card. He's had some good results at Wimbledon, but he's also going to be very frustrating. He actually played the Wimbledon Boys Champion Kier in the first round of qualifying. Second round. And as soon as I saw it on paper, I just thought 18-year-old who is very raw, obviously wants to play aggressively against Manarino, who's going to just frustrate him so much with his style of play. It's not a good matchup for the young Dane, and it wasn't. He lost his straight sets really comfortably. But he beat Australian in League 2 in the final round of qualifying, 4 sets, came from a set down. He's obviously going to be tricky for someone. Fuchsovich actually lost. He was the number 1 seed to Luxembourg player called Rodesh. Chris Rodesh had a really tough route as well. I won't talk about the Brits because Oliver Tarvik got through, but I don't think he's necessarily going to make a run. He's a college player who won't get paid because he's in college still, 21 years of age. And interested to see if he can do anything. But he beat 29th seed for qualifying block.
Where does he go? Where does he go to school?
I've forgotten, to be fair.
What's his name?
Where he goes. Oliver Tarvet, Tarvet.
San Diego.
You go to San Diego sometimes, right? Don't you?
It's a different school. So there's UC San Diego, which who I used to do some commentary for them. This is actually San Diego University.
Okay.
The Toreros.
Next to San
There's
Diego
also San Diego State, Faizan. All 3 different schools.
Okay. All right. Shout out in the comments if you went to San Diego State. That's all we want today. We went there. What's the school like?
It's very nice. You want to go to school there.
Okay, right. So that's better than... Okay. Is that the best one? San Diego State.
I think in terms of proximity to the beach, yes. But I don't know about any of the other factors.
Which one's closest to San Diego Zoo?
It would not be UC San Diego because that's up north in La Jolla by the famous golf course Torrey Pines. So if you know Torrey Pines, that's where UC San Diego is, right around there. And then, I've never been to San Diego University where Oliver Tarvet went. So I'm not really sure about the geography there.
Okay. Interesting. I need to go and find out. Arthur Kazar won in 4 sets versus Dusan Lajovic, which was, a great win. Lajovic has made 10 main draws at Wimbledon, so he'll feel a bit hard done by not to get through. But Kazar, we talked to him as well at qualifying. He seems pretty confident as well. Christian Garin, former quarterfinalist at Wimbledon, obviously 2022, lost to Kyrgios. He lost in 5 sets to Italian Zeppieri. Lefty, 18 aces. I know it was over 5 sets, but I think it's going to be tricky for a lot of players. Lefty slice serve. Not saying that he's going to do what Draper and Shelton will do, but he could be a difficult one. And then actually one who a lot of people might not know about is a Kazakh player called Babet Zukiev. Gil, have you seen him play?
I haven't.
You haven't? Okay.
No.
I'll tell you about him. So it's a little, before we go, quick little story. So last year at qualifying, I was in a shuttle with a few people going from the main site to qualifying. And one of the guys sitting next to me was actually part of the Kazakh Tennis Federation. I think he's like the head coach. And he said to me, look, if you're doing qualifying and you're going to interview, so make sure you get an interview with Zakayev and go and watch him because this guy is the real deal. He's got a huge serve like John Isner, Riley Opelka, big off the ground, like real talent. And I was like, yeah, okay, you're going to say that. Anyway, so he rocked up to qualifying, watched a couple of rounds. He made the second round, lost in the final round of qualifying, interviewed him a few times, and I was like, okay, yeah, rocket serve, 140 mile per hour plus, but lacking a bit of anything else, really. Bit of the movement, not really great off the ground. Okay, fine. This year qualifying, he's now got through, beat a Frenchman in the final round of qualifying, Luka Pavlovic. But what was really impressive was he beat Yannick Hanfmann in the second round of qualifying, which was really impressive. It was a bit of a serve fest at times, but definitely improved off the ground. His net play as well. Huge serve. And he kind of gives you Pesci Pericard vibes, I would say. So, yeah, interesting to see if he can do something. I think, if he draws someone who's not one of the elite guys, he could be real trouble in the first round or two. So that's someone to look out for as well. That's my qualifying roundup for those who care. But actually, lastly as well, so Dominic Stricker lost. We didn't interview him, obviously. Very talented young Swiss player who was actually thinking about retiring at the start of this year. We did ask him about it as well, and he was like, "No, really enjoying it now, all good." Didn't get through against Japanese player Mochizuki, who I didn't know much about. Have you seen him play?
Yeah, I have. I'm not really remembering my impressions, but I know I've seen him play.
Yeah, so Anthony, who's actually here, managed to interview him at qualifying, and he is a junior champion at Wimbledon. He's actually the only Japanese player to be a junior Grand Slam champion, which is very interesting. But yes, very good returner, very slick player. Managed to, for most of the match, outplay Dominic Stricker and returned really well. He's going to be an interesting one as well, so keep an eye out for him to see how he gets on. A relatively young and not particularly well-known player, but obviously following in the footsteps of Kai Nishikori as well as a Japanese pro player, only 22 years of age as well. So yeah, beat Urber, Alves, and Stricker. So yeah, pretty good going. Cool. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Gill, thank you for being on as always and for persisting with myself. It's been over an hour talking to me, and that's always an accomplishment. So I appreciate it. Make sure you go to Gill's channel, subscribe if you haven't done so already. And if you want to subscribe to us, then please do. We have lots of Wimbledon content coming up. Tomorrow, I'm actually going to an exhibition called Boodles, and we might get to interview Alexei Popperin on video, which would be cool. And hopefully sit down with him. Otherwise, I'll get to watch some free tennis. I can't complain. And then we'll also be doing Media Weekend from Saturday, Sunday, and then obviously the main fortnight. So yeah, daily podcasts as usual, daily articles, and everything else. Thanks very much, guys. Stay safe. Well, we'll see you next video.